we've done it a couple of times, but it's always a thrill. And
Thank you.
My biggest fear, and I got here a little early, is that nobody shows up. Okay, so, you know, you put you're out there advertised, and I'm going, oh gosh, I just always pray that at least I fill the room. So I'm thrilled that we have the small room today.
It's overflowing.
Yes. So anytime I've given my testimony, it is a great experience for me. So any of you who have not given your testimony publicly or anything, I really would encourage you to think about that, because what it does is it's helped me just understand my faith better and just my faith walk better, and just kind of where I came from and where I am today, and hopefully where I'm going. So I'm going to start at the beginning. I was born in 1955 in Missouri on an Army base. My dad was in the military. I'm the first of 4 kids in my family. And I lived in Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, Atlanta, Orlando, and then I ended up going down to the University of Miami. But where I kind of got started and just as to the kind of man that I've become started when I was about 11 years old with my Pop Warner football coach. I had a great guy, his name was Bob Johnston, and he was the guy that kind of got me started in understanding what it takes to be a champion. And I'll never forget it. If you can picture this, 11-year-old kids, and we come out to our first day in practice, and it's Pop Warner football, and we got our pads on, and we're kind of like goofy and just small, but we had great aspirations. And Coach Johnson said, okay, he says, I always like to do this first day of practice. He says, we're going to take a quick roll call. He says, everyone who wants to be a champion, I want you to stand over here. And everybody else who wants to be average, I want you to stand over here. So we're 11 years old, and we're going, oh gosh, I want to be a champion, And I remember he sat down, and everybody took that over here. Nobody wanted to be average. Nobody could handle the peer pressure. But that was the first time that I ever really thought about what it takes to really be a champion, and what it takes to be great at something. And we ended up going 10-1 as that season. And Coach Johnson, he always said we went undefeated. And I said, no, Coach. And what he said was, he said, we didn't lose that game. We just ran out of time. So that's kind of where I got started in just understanding what team sports were like and what leadership was like, and it was a phenomenal experience. I went on to high school in Orlando, Florida. I was a 3-sport letterman, and I played baseball, football, and wrestling. And I was just blessed to get a scholarship to the University of Miami in 1973, which was just phenomenal, because my folks were not in a position to really be able to pay for a major college, and I was going to probably have to stay at home and work and do what you do when your parents don't have the blessings that some do. So that was just my ticket to come down to South Florida and just get started, and that was a phenomenal run for me. I ended up staying on. Well, I played for 4 years. I started the 1975 and 76 season. My senior year in 76, I was defensive team captain. A couple of the guys that I played with were Otis Anderson, a guy named Jim Bird. I actually stayed on after I got done playing. I didn't get drafted. I was too small, really, to play in the NFL. But I got to stay on as a graduate assistant and coached some pretty significant guys. And one of the most special guys that I got to coach was Mark Richt, who we all know went to Georgia, great coach there. And then I got the opportunity when Mark took the University of Miami job to become the chairman of the board of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes down there. So that was an awful good experience. So I ended up, after I got out of school, I married my college sweetheart, and up in Orlando, and I was working with my dad. That's how I got into the roofing business. Was I worked with him. He started a small little roofing business 6 months before I got out of college, and I'd gotten my MBA, and my dad said, "Hey, you want to go into business with me?" And I'm thinking, roofing? Are you kidding? And I said, "I got an MBA, Dad." And he said, "No, come on up and see what we got." And so I go up to Jacksonville. He was living in Jacksonville, and it was a little bitty company. I mean, you know, like 4 employees in the office. You know, everybody had no teeth, a lot of tattoos. You know, here I am coming out of Miami thinking I'm a hot shot from the University of Miami, got my MBA, and whew, boy, did I get introduced to. So I stayed with my dad for 6 weeks, and I remember saying to him, I said, "Dad, there's just no way I can see myself in Jacksonville, Florida." And this was like December, January, when it was really much colder than I was accustomed to. And I said, "You know, I just don't see this happening, Dad." And he said, "Well, what do you think about Orlando? And would you like to go down and run a roofing business in Orlando?" Now, I'm 23 years old now, and I got no idea what it would take to run a company. But I'd been, you know, in leadership positions, so I had a pretty good idea. And he says, "There's a company going out of business in Orlando. Why don't you go down there and run that company? And I can buy their yellow page ad, and I can take over the note on their trucks, and you go down and run that." And I had a buddy that I played high school ball with, and that had a father who had a small little 1,000 square foot warehouse that was available. So I went and met with him, and I said, "Hey, can I get your warehouse?" And he gave it to me, and I actually lived in that warehouse for the first 6 months. It had a little office in the back and a bathroom, and I got this company started. And I started it like, I had a yellow page ad, and I had no clue how to put a roof on. And I would go out and I'd talk to people, and they would think that I was an expert. And to be an expert at anything, you know what you got to do to be an expert at anything? You just got to know a little bit more than the person you're talking to. So I would talk to these homeowners, and I'd tell them about roofing and how you do it and all this stuff, and they believed me. And I'd get a contract, and then I'd go back and I'd look at the back of the shingle wrapper. How do you do these things? And that's how I got started in the roofing business. And I want to tell you a little story about my first big break in the roofing business, and that was I had a property manager, a guy named Steve Lafreniere. He had a company in Orlando, and he managed. I didn't even know what a property manager was, but I would get a call from him, and I was doing all of his leak repairs and stuff. And so Steve's calling me here, he's calling me there, and one day I get a call from him, and he says, "Greg, could you do I have an apartment complex, you know, the one you fix some leaks on it. We're going to convert this to a condominiums, and we need to re-roof it. Can you handle that, you know?" And I did like everybody would. "No question, Steve." Now, I had never done anything bigger than like a house, okay? So I go to his office, and I sit down with him, and I'm across the desk from him, and on his desk, I recognize 2 proposals from what I thought were like the gods of roofing up in Orlando, Hammock Brothers and Engelmeyer, and those proposals are sitting right there, and he says, "Hey, can you excuse me just a second?" He got up and walked out. Now, all of us in sales know the first thing they teach you in sales training is what?
How to read upside down.
Yeah, how to read upside down. I mean, everybody knows that.
How to read upside down.
Okay. So I'm like checking this out, you know, and I'm seeing what their prices are and everything. And Steve walks back in, and I didn't realize this at the time, but it was a setup. And he goes, "I need a 3rd proposal. I'd love to work with you. You're a great roofing contractor. As a matter of fact, I have never had anybody that serviced me as good as you." And I'm sitting there and I'm going, "And if you only knew that you're my only client." And I sit there and wait for you to call, because when the phone's not ringing and nobody's in the yellow pages, So, but I was real quiet, and so he says, "Can you go how long is it going to take you to get a proposal?" And I said, "Oh, Steve, I can turn this around about an hour and a half. I'll be back here with one." And so I go to my office. I put together a proposal. Their price was like $250,000 in today's numbers. Mine was like $240,000. And I deliver it to him, and he goes, "Oh, awesome! You're low bidder." And he signs the contract right there. Okay, and he goes, "Oh, one thing." He says, "I need this finished in 6 weeks." And you know what I said?
Sure.
No problem. No problem.
We'll get it done.
So I go out. I get in my truck, and I think probably the first thing I ought to do is go look at the property because I've never seen it. And so I go out and I get to the property, and it's like a 2.5-story building, and my ladder was too short, and I had to go buy a ladder to get up there. But I get up there, and I'm looking out, and there were 6 buildings, and it was like the Ponderosa to me. I mean, it was big, and I'm just seeing shingles after shingles, and I'm thinking 6 weeks. So I went back to my high school football coach, and they were having spring practice, and I said, "Hey, coach, is there any chance that I could get some of the kids to work maybe on a weekend or something, labor pool like that?" I'm not thinking workers' comp, I'm not thinking safety, I'm not thinking anything. And he says, "Well, we got practice this afternoon, why don't you come out and talk to the kids?" And so I go out, and I still had it, like I could still play if I wanted to and stuff. And the coach let me talk to the kids, and I said, "Anybody want to work on the weekends?" I mean, I said, $1.80 is minimum wage. I'm paying $3 an hour. Anybody interested? And I mean, like all these hands go up. I get like 30 kids. And so I'm thinking, I'm in business, baby. And so I said, "Coach Scott," I said, one of the kids said, "Hey, how are we going to get there? We don't have cars or driving. This is down on the other side of Orlando." And I said, "Hey, Coach Scott, can I borrow one of them school buses?" He's teaching driver's ed, and he says, "Yeah, we could probably work that out," but he says, "I can't let you drive it." He said, "I'd have to come." And I said, "Oh, that'd be great." So here I get Lyman High School's football team. I got 30 kids. We're driving. And now, any of you guys know Best Roofing? You ever see our buses?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is where the buses started. Okay? So we go down, and make a long story short, Coach gets up on the roof. We put the offense on one side of the roof, put the defense on the other side, blow the whistle. Guys who get the shingles off first get an extra hour of pay. I've always been a real believer in incentive compensation. So that's where it all started, and I did that job in 6 weeks. Every Saturday I had Lyman High School's football team come out, tear off the shingles. My 3 guys would nail shingles all week until we got this project done. Wow. And I did really well on it. And that was kind of what launched me into being a commercial roofing contractor. From there, my dad ended up closing his business down in Jacksonville, came down. We worked together for about 8 years in Orlando, until we kind of came to a crossroads. We weren't getting along. He was having an affair with a gal in the office, and it was just really a difficult time for me. And I kind of thought, "I'm going to call you out, Dad. I'm going to make you make a choice. It's going to be her or me, And he picked her. And he fired me. And I packed my bags. I just had my first child with my wife. I had been married up there, and we headed down to Fort Lauderdale, and I started a company called General Roofing, which was the same name of the company that I had in Orlando. And from 1987 to 1994, I grew that into being a really significant company. I had 3 offices all over the state. I'd end up buying my dad's company out. My wife had 5 clothing stores. That's when I met you, Bill. It was during this time. I met Bill. I used to go to his cleaners when I lived up in Pompano all the time. But I looked like on the surface like I had it all. I mean, I had beautiful kids. I had a home over across the street from the beach, right by the lighthouse. I had an airplane, I had a boat. I mean, I thought, on the surface, it looked great. I had 3 kids. but I was just broken on the inside, and I was missing something. And my marriage looked like really it was good in public, but behind the doors, things weren't good, and we weren't getting along. And I was looking for answers, and I ended up having a guy named Mike Sullivan. And Harley, you were talking about discipling guys. That's what Mike did to me. He discipled me, and I started going to church with him, and he gave me my first Bible. And as I started understanding who Jesus was and where the Lord fits in, it started. I was starting to get a lot of clarity in my thoughts, and I wanted to be the man of the family. And I come home and I introduced Jesus to my wife, and I said, I want to change the way we're living as a family. And she wasn't really into it, and just kind of we really grew apart during that period of time. So I don't know any of you who might have gone through a divorce. If you have, it's a terrible time, but I think it takes more guts to get a divorce than it does to stay married, and I can testify to that because I wasn't really happily married for a long time. And as my faith got stronger, I just said, I don't want to live like this, and I don't want my children growing up thinking that this is what love looks like, and this is what a healthy relationship looks like. So we ended up getting divorced. Ian, you were probably about 5 then? 7, yeah. And it was a really tough time. It was a terribly tough time, but it was a phenomenal time for me. And I ended up going. You guys remember Promise Keepers? Yeah, there was an awesome movement among men all over the country, and I went to a Promise Keepers event it was like 1994 at First Baptist Church downtown, and they did the altar call, and I just said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to step up, and I'm going to commit my stuff to the Lord. And it was really the start of a journey, and for all of us who are believers, that's what it is. It's a journey, and it's about a relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's like any relationship. You're not going to have a relationship unless you spend some time together. And I can tell you, as my journey has progressed, at first it was pretty lonely. I really didn't feel like I knew who Christ was. But by being around groups of men like this, CBMC, and just being able to be with other men and talk about the challenges that you're having and being vulnerable, it's just, it helps every one of our walks. And I can tell you today that, I live in the Spirit. And, I try to run my company in a godly way, and I feel very, very blessed. After I became a Christian and I met my second wife, Liz, we've been married for 25 years now, and we blended 2 families. She had 2 children, I had 3, and then we had 1 together. And I had right after I got married, I had this like crazy idea. A friend of mine had introduced me to Wayne Huizinga, and we had lunch together, and he told me how he did Blockbuster Video, Waste Management, AutoNation, got all these companies and did a roll-up. And I thought, well, I said, I could do that in the roofing business. So in 1998, I did a roll-up of roofing companies all over the country, and built the largest roofing business in the country at that time. But unfortunately, as a lot of these venture capital, private equity, kind of financially engineered situations work, I was totally focused on building a great company. They were totally focused on how can we position this thing to flip and get out of it and make some money. Mm-hmm. And so we had a little bit of a conflict, and I was the largest individual stockholder in that company, and but I had no idea. I'd never been to a board meeting before I was the chairman of that board. And it allowed some people on the board that were more transaction oriented and thought process than building a great company. And they asked me to step down as the CEO. They wanted somebody who knew how to run a $1 billion company, and we were like at 280 million at that time. And they said they wanted somebody who knew the Wall Street thing. And I said, you guys are missing it. We're like 28, $10 million companies. I mean, we're a small company, we're a trade company, and you need somebody who has some domain expertise. They didn't buy it, and I lost on a 5-4 vote at a board meeting to ask me to step down. Here I self-financed this whole thing, and then all of a sudden I got voted out, and that was one of the toughest times that I had ever made. And it was a great lesson. It was a great lesson. But I was pretty broken then. I was pretty broken, and I had an opportunity to buy Best Roofing. That's the company that I own today. And right after I bought Best Roofing, I went into a really bad depression for about 6 months. I remember I went 21 days. I had felt like I had. My whole life was just crumbling in front of me. Here I was on top of the world. I had built this big company. I was on the cover of magazines in the trade, and then all of a sudden I'm flat on my ass. I lost everything because I had taken everything in stock, and the private equity guys did a capital call and diluted me down to nothing. And so what I thought was going to be an amazing thing turned out to be a very big disappointment. And the biggest lesson that I learned there was that, and I kind of was chasing the dollar bill and thinking that was going to make me happy, and God just kind of knocked me down and put me on my knees, and I was really in a bad state, just emotionally, financially, and fortunately I was in a great group of guys, about 6 guys in a Bible study, and these guys just picked me up and helped me, and I forget your name, but just having the courage to say I'm in a place today that I could use some help, I guarantee you this group of men is going to help you with that, because I've been there. So God bless you for just saying it, because it's the people who don't say it that really need it even more. And I know that there's probably a couple other people at this table who would love to just have some really man-to-man talk, and to talk and just understand who Jesus is. Today I have the privilege of mentoring my son in the business. I had another son that was also involved in the company, and he wasn't patient enough to just let things unfold. And Ian and I both helped him start his own roofing business. So if you have commercial properties, that's what Best Roofing does. My other son, Zach, he does residential work, and he has a company called Kairos Roofing. It's the company with the pink trucks. Let's see here. I wanted to share with you guys my favorite verse of the Bible. James first chapter, 2nd verse. Whenever trouble comes your way, let it be an opportunity for joy. Now, the first time that somebody talked to me about this, I said, trouble and joy? What, are you kidding me? For when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you'll be strong in character and ready for anything. I'm convinced that failure and disappointment is really nothing more than just a rite of passage, because it's those failures in your life is where things are really learned. In closing, what I'd like to just encourage everybody here to do is get involved. Get involved in as many faith-related things as you can, and circle yourself with people of faith. And I've made it a project to try to disciple some men, and that's probably one of the greatest thrills when somebody that you've discipled will give their life to Christ. I want to tell you a little bit about kind of what I do from a prayer standpoint. people always say, pray for me or do this or that. And I was having the toughest time, like, I would pray, but I would forget what I prayed about, or, it would just be like, okay, I prayed, But one of the things that I've done is I'm a journaler. Now, I have about 10 books. And I can't tell you every day, but almost every day, I get up in the morning and I write a letter to God. And I'm going to tell you, it's probably one of the greatest things that I've ever done in my faith walk. Because what it does is it helps me just pour out my heart on a piece of paper, tell Jesus, what are you looking for? What am I looking for? How can I just tell you what's going on in my life, and I gotta tell you, I'll go back the next day or the next week or whatever, and it's amazing to see how your prayers get answered. And I don't take them for granted at all, not at all. So here's a couple of questions. Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in heaven? Do you believe in creation or evolution? That was one of the biggest things that I had to get over with. I was kind of, as I was growing up, I thought about evolution, but then I started looking at what this world is. And I thought, how could this all come together without a creator? I mean, every one of us in our own responsibilities, does anything create itself? I mean, would best roofing just kind of evolve, or would any relationship just kind of evolve? No, there's got to be a creator that put all of this together, and that was a huge hurdle for me. So I encourage everybody, if you're not involved in a Bible study, get involved in a Bible study. It's important to be tough, but it's a lot more important to be kind. And I encourage every one of us to just be kind, and God bless you guys, and thanks for giving me a chance to share my story.
So we got a little bit of time for some Q&A.
Okay.
Okay with you?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
got a question. What happened with Andrew?
Hurricane Andrew?
Yeah, Hurricane Andrew.
Well, Hurricane Andrew was my first windfall. Okay, that's when I Hurricane Andrew was as a roofing contractor at that time. That was like a major. It kind of catapulted me up to the next level of. I mean, I didn't have to look for work. It was just a matter of like all of a sudden, there was so much out there. So it was a real. I had a phenomenal run at that. Are you asking me?
Game plan. You wrote a game plan.
Playbook.
You wrote the game plan if it happened.
Oh yeah, I had, and I have this at Best Roofing. I mean, if a hurricane is coming, we have every department has its own responsibilities, and we just go into like combat mode. And so the Hurricane Andrew, I was ready for it when it hit.
The playbook.
Yeah, the playbook. But I had a helicopter. One of the things was I had a helicopter chartered, and this was before drones, before everything. This is, really I think it was before cell phones. And I went up in a helicopter with my camera and just started taking pictures of all my projects and all my clients, and came back, developed them, and got very proactive on helping people. So there were a lot of stories there that originated from that. Yeah. Anything else?
Anyone else?
What was the Bible verse you quoted?
James, the first chapter, second verse. Yes,
Do you still disciple men in the Bible?
absolutely. Yeah.
How many disciples do you have?
I wouldn't say that I have disciples.
People that look up to you as a mentor.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I have the wonderful privilege of leading a pretty good sized company. That we have a corporate chaplain on staff, and I've had the privilege of working with Bob Coy. Bob's been on our staff for almost 3 years, and in his own way, he's still in ministry.